What would you think if I told you that the desert you fear is not a wasteland of sand, but the unmapped geography of your own unconscious? You stand at the precipice of a life lived in the safety of the herd. Yet within the marrow of your bones, there is a low, persistent hum, a frequency that does not belong to the sheep you tend or the structures you have built to shelter your fragile ego. This is the call of the personal legend, a Jungian summons from the deep self to the ego, demanding a shedding of the persona that has kept you small, manageable, and profoundly unfulfilled. The story of the boy, Santiago, is not a mere fable for children, it is a brutal and beautiful map of the individuation process, a psychological odyssey that demands the total immolation of the man you were to give birth to the man you were always meant to be. The boy begins in the green pastures of Andalusia, a landscape of comfort and cyclical repetition. He is the shepherd, the caretaker of the primal instincts, yet he is also the prisoner of them. To the herd, the sun rises and sets only to mark the time for water and grain. They are the personification of the unexamined life, content with the vegetative state of existence, seeking nothing beyond the immediate gratification of the senses. Imagine this. You are the shepherd, and your sheep represent every safe thought, every predictable routine, and every social expectation you have allowed to define your boundaries. You think you lead them, but in reality, their limitations dictate your path. The weight of the jacket he carries is not just a protection against the morning chill, it is the weight of the past, the heavy cloak of tradition and the expectations of a father who wanted him to be a priest, to be a vessel for a dead dogma rather than a seeker of a living truth. But the dream returns. The dream is the crack in the armor of the conscious mind. It is the shadow and the anima whispering of Egyptian pyramids, of a treasure that exists beyond the horizon of the known. When the boy encounters the old king, Melchizedek, he is encountering the archetype of the wise old man, the internal authority that bridges the gap between the mundane and the divine. This is the moment where the psyche is forced to recognize its own agency. The king does not give the boy gold, he gives him the realization that the greatest lie in the world is that we lose control of what's happening to us and our lives become controlled by fate. You have felt this lie, haven't you? The comforting numbing sensation of believing that your stagnation is a product of circumstance rather than a choice to ignore the omens. To embark on the quest for the alchemical gold is to accept that the universe is not a chaotic void, but a sentient tapestry of meaning, woven with the threads of the soul of the world. This is the prima materia, the raw, chaotic material of life that must be refined through the heat of experience. The boy sells his sheep. He discards his security. He enters the city of Tangier, and immediately, the shadow of the world strikes. He is robbed. He is stripped of his means, left with nothing but two stones, Urim and Thummim, the binary language of intuition. This is the first stage of the great work, the Negredo, or the blackening. It is the dark night of the soul where the ego is crushed, where the illusions of the external world are stripped away to reveal the hollowness of a life built on material certainty. You are forced to look into the mirror of your own failure and decide if you are a victim of the world or an adventurer in search of treasure. Most people stop here. Most people retreat into the bitterness of the crystal merchant. A man who dreams of Mecca but refuses to go because he fears that once the dream is realized, he will have no reason to live. The crystal merchant is the personification of the spiritual bypass, the one who cherishes the idea of transformation more than the transformation itself. He lives in a state of perpetual potentiality, a ghost in his own life, polishing the glass of other people's desires while his own soul gathers dust in the shadows of what if. But the boy chooses the path of the sun. He works. He learns the language of trade, the language of the desert, and eventually, the language without words. He understands that the crystals he cleans are reflections of the soul, they must be clear for the light to pass through. This is the subtle shift from the physical to the metaphysical. You begin to realize that your labor is not just a means to an end, but a ritual of preparation. The desert is waiting. The desert is the vast, unforgiving expanse of the unconscious where there are no landmarks, only the sun and the stars. To cross the desert is to enter a state of liminality, the threshold where the old self is no longer viable and the new self has not yet been formed. It is a place of absolute silence. where the only voice you can hear is the one you have spent a lifetime trying to drown out, the voice of your own heart. As the caravan moves deeper into the dunes, the boy meets the Englishman, the intellectual, the man who seeks the philosopher's stone through books and logic alone. The Englishman is the archetype of the disconnected mind, trying to categorize the divine, trying to solve the mystery of life through a series of formulas and footnotes. He represents the part of you that wants to understand the how before you experience the why. He carries a library on the back of a camel, oblivious to the soul of the world vibrating in the very heat haze of the horizon. The boy, however, looks at the desert. He listens to the wind. He understands that the alchemical process is not found in the ink of a parchment, but in the blood of a lived experience. The desert is not an obstacle, it is a mirror. It reflects back to you your thirst, your exhaustion, your doubt, and your divinity. Then comes the oasis, the Alphaeum. It is here that the boy encounters the anima in her most potent form, Fatima. She is the woman of the desert, the soul image that provides both the temptation to stay and the strength to leave. This is the ultimate test of the seeker. You find love, you find peace, you find a version of paradise, and every fiber of your being screams to stop the journey here. Why go to the pyramids when the treasure of the heart is right in front of you? But the alchemist, the master of the shadows, appears. He is the manifestation of the higher self, the one who knows that love is not a cage, but a fuel. If the boy stays, the omens will begin to fade. The palm trees will lose their luster. The love will turn into a resentment born of an unfulfilled destiny. You know this feeling, the quiet trot of a soul that settled for good enough when the stars were calling for everything. The alchemist does not offer comfort, he offers the sword and the wind. He demands that you turn yourself into the wind, that you achieve the ultimate psychological breakthrough, the realization that you are not a separate entity struggling against nature, but that you are nature. You are the sun. You are the hand that wrote it all. The oasis is not a destination, it is a psychological sanctuary that threatens to become a tomb of the spirit. As the boy stands among the date palms, the air thick with the scent of jasmine and the promise of a life anchored in the warmth of Fatima's gaze, he faces the most seductive shadow of the hero's journey, the temptation of the good life. You have felt this pull, the magnetic lure of a plateau where the struggle ends and the ego can finally rest in the accolades of its past victories. But the alchemist, that stern guardian of the transformative fire, reminds us that the soul of the world is a moving stream, not a stagnant pool. To stay is to invite the slow decay of the spirit. The alchemist speaks not to the boy's fears, but to his potentiality, forcing him to look into the dark mirror of a future unlived. He paints a picture of the years to come, how the omens will gradually withdraw their guidance, how the boy's ability to read the world will wither like a vine severed from its root, and how, eventually, the very love that tempted him to stay will become the reminder of his greatest cowardice. This is the stage of the albedo, the whitening, where the soul must be purified of its attachments to the material and the emotional in order to achieve a higher state of consciousness. It is the realization that the anima, represented by Fatima, is not a prize to be possessed, but a partner in the great work. True love, in the Jungian sense, does not demand the sacrifice of the personal legend, it demands its fulfillment. Fatima, in her desert wisdom, knows this. She is the desert itself, vast, patient, and enduring. She understands that a man who abandons his destiny is a man who will eventually lose his capacity to love. And so, the boy must leave. He must descend further into the alchemical heat, moving from the safety of the oasis into the heart of the tribal wars, where death is no longer a concept but a constant, vibrating presence in the atmosphere. The journey toward the pyramids becomes a dialogue between the boy and his own heart. In the profound silence of the dunes, the heart begins to speak with a terrifying honesty. It speaks of its fears of suffering, its memories of the shepherd's life, and its longing for the simple certainties of the past. The heart is the repository of all our evolutionary anxieties, the part of the psyche that seeks homeostasis at the cost of evolution. But the alchemist teaches the boy to befriending this treacherous organ. You cannot silence the heart, you must educate it. You must listen to its complaints until it has nothing left to say. until it realizes that it is part of the sun and the moon, and that the only thing it truly fears is its own disconnection from the divine. The tribal wars that rage around them are the externalization of the internal conflict, the clash of opposing forces within the psyche that must be reconciled. As they are captured by the warriors, the boy is faced with an impossible task, to turn himself into the wind. This is the moment of the rubedo, the reddening, the final stage of the alchemical process where the ego must undergo a total dissolution to be reborn as a cosmic force. The boy is no longer a shepherd, nor a laborer, nor a student of books. He is a consciousness standing before the abyss. He speaks to the desert, to the wind, and to the Sunday, pleading for the power to transcend his human form. But the desert and the wind cannot help him, they are merely elements. The Sunday in all its majesty reveals that it, too, is a seeker, for it knows only the light it gives and not the source of its own creation. The boy is forced to look past the archetypes, past the elemental forces of nature, to the hand that wrote it all. This is the encounter with the self, the center of the psyche that is both human and divine. In that moment of absolute surrender, the boy understands that his soul and the soul of the world are one and the same. He realizes that the power to transform the world is not a magical trick, but a psychological reality. When we evolve, everything around us evolves too. The storm that he conjures is not a manipulation of the weather, it is the external manifestation of an internal explosion of awareness. He becomes the wind because he has ceased to be Santiago. He has shed the last vestiges of the persona. He has moved beyond the duality of subject and object. You, standing at the edge of your own metaphorical desert, must realize that the wind you seek to master is your own untapped power. The obstacles you face are not there to stop you, but to provide the friction necessary for the alchemical fire to burn away the dross of your insecurities. The boy arrives at the pyramids, exhausted, scarred, and weeping. He begins to dig. He digs until his hands bleed, until his strength is gone, only to be set upon by refugees of the war who beat him and mock his dreams. One of them tells him of a recurring dream of his own, a treasure hidden under a sycamore tree in an abandoned church in Spain. The irony is staggering. A cosmic joke played by the soul of the world. The treasure was always at home, but this is the crucial distinction. The treasure under the tree is not the same treasure it would have been had he never left. The physical gold is merely the material symbol of the spiritual transformation that has occurred. Had he dug under the tree years before, he would have been a shepherd with a pile of gold. Now, he is a man who has mastered the elements, who has communicated with the Sunday and who has found the peace that surpasses all understanding. The gold is the bonus of the universe, the outward sign of an inward grace. The real treasure is the consciousness that can now perceive the gold for what it is, a tool, not a master. The return to the abandoned church is the return to the origin, but with 1,000-yard stare of the initiate. He stands under the same stars that once looked down on his sheep, but he is no longer the same man. The sycamore tree is no longer just a tree, it is the axis mundi, the center of his world. As he unearths the chest of Spanish gold coins, he is not just finding wealth, he is reclaiming his history from a place of power. He can now return to Fatima, not as a boy seeking refuge, but as a man who brings the desert with him. He has achieved the goal of individuation, the integration of the shadow, the anima, and the ego into a harmonious whole. The excavation of the soul does not end with the discovery of gold, it begins with the realization that the gold was merely the bait used by the universe to lure you into the crucible. As Santiago stands beneath the ancient, twisted limbs of the sycamore tree, the shovelful of earth he tosses aside is the final shedding of the mundane. You must understand that the church, once a place of stagnant prayer and dead stones, has been transformed into a temple of the living spirit through his presence. The boy who slept here years ago, dreaming of pyramids, was a seed. The man who stands here now is the harvest. This is the paradox of the Jungian journey. We travel across the scorching sands of the external world only to find that the destination was the very ground upon which we first stood. Yet we could not truly see that ground until we had looked upon the face of the sun and survived the terrors of the void. Imagine this. You have spent your entire life searching for a validation that exists outside of yourself, in the applause of the crowd, the security of a bank account, or the eyes of a lover. You have been digging in everyone else's garden, hoping to find the roots of your own identity. But the alchemical secret is that the prima materia, the base metal of your suffering, is the only substance that can be transmuted into the incorruptible gold of the self. The refugees who beat Santiago at the foot of the pyramids were not his enemies, they were the final messengers of the shadow, stripping him of his last attachment to the result of his quest. By mocking his dream, they forced him to rely solely on the internal conviction of his spirit. When the leader of the thieves recounted his own dream of the treasure in Spain, he was the voice of the universe confirming that the map is etched into the collective unconscious. But only those brave enough to act on the omens will ever hold the physical map in their hands. The psychological weight of this realization is immense. It suggests that your life, right now, in its current state of messy potential, contains the seeds of everything you desire. But those seeds require the heat of the journey to germinate. If Santiago had never left, he would have lived a life of quiet desperation, haunted by the ghost of a dream he was too afraid to pursue. He would have become the crystal merchant, a man who lives in a prison of almost. You are afraid of failure. But the greater tragedy is the success that comes at the cost of your soul's evolution. The gold Santiago finds is not just currency, it is a symbol of the integrated psyche, the union of the conscious mind that set out on the journey and the unconscious depths that provided the vision. As the chest is unearthed, the coins gleaming in the moonlight of Andalusia, there is no ego-driven celebration. There is only a profound, silent detachment. This is the state of the adept. He has moved beyond the need for external validation because he has witnessed the machinery of the universe firsthand. He has spoken to the wind and the sun. What use has he for the petty recognition of men? The treasure is his, but he is no longer possessed by the treasure. This is the ultimate freedom, to possess the world without being possessed by it. You see, the treasure was never meant to change his life, it was meant to confirm the change that had already occurred within him. The man who can turn himself into the wind does not need gold to be powerful. Yet the gold comes to him because he is no longer desperate for it. The wind begins to blow again, the Levanta, the wind from the east, bringing with it the scent of the desert and the perfume of Fatima. This is the integration of the anima. He does not return to the oasis as a beggar or a dreamer, he returns as a master of the two worlds. He has bridged the gap between the physical and the spiritual, the known and the unknown. He has survived the negredo of loss, the albedo of purification, and the rubedo of total transformation. The journey is circular, but it is a spiral, not a closed loop. He returns to the same point, but at a higher level of consciousness. This is the rebirth. The old Santiago is dead, buried under the sands of the Sahara, and the new man is a vessel for the soul of the world. You are at the threshold of this same rebirth. The pyramids you seek are calling to you through the synchronicities of your daily life, the recurring thoughts, the chance encounters, the coincidences that feel like a nudge from the divine. To follow them is to risk everything, but to ignore them is to lose yourself. The fear you feel is the ego's way of protecting its current form. But the ego is a shell that must be cracked for the spirit to breathe. The desert is not your enemy, it is your training ground. The tribal wars are not your destruction, they are the fire that burns away your illusions. The silence that follows the discovery of the gold is the most powerful part of the narrative. It is the silence of a man who has found the still point of the turning world. He knows that the journey will continue, for the soul of the world is infinite. But he no longer seeks for the sake of seeking. He seeks from a place of wholeness. He is at peace with the shadows because he has walked through them. He is at peace with the light because he has become it. The search for the other has ended because he has found the self. There is no more need to prove, no more need to strive, no more need to beg the universe for signs. He is the sign. Now, the final veil drops. The external world, the sheep, the pyramids, the gold, reveals itself as a grand projection of the internal state. The treasure is the awareness that you are the author of your own mythology. You are the dreamer, the dream, and the one who wakes from it. The journey of the alchemist is your journey. A call to stop being a spectator in the drama of your own life and to become the master of the elements. The wind is calling. The desert is waiting. The treasure is already where you are. but you must go to the ends of the earth to earn the eyes that can see it. 1. Never betray your personal legend. Lesson: each of us is born with a unique mission, something that sets our soul on fire. In childhood, we know exactly what it is. But as we grow, fear and societal prejudices cause us to bury it deep within. Video commentary: don't live someone else's life. Don't work a job you hate just to buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like. The price of pursuing your dream may be high, but the price of a lifetime of regret is 1,000 times higher. 2. The fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. Lesson: Santiago's heart feared being hurt, so it advised him to turn back. However, the alchemist taught him that the anxiety felt before facing a challenge is always more terrifying than the challenge itself. Video commentary: are you afraid to start a business for fear of bankruptcy? Are you afraid to confess your feelings for fear of rejection? Remember, fear is merely a phantom in your mind. When you truly take action, fear dissolves, leaving only focus and courage. Don't die of fear before the battle even begins. 3. The law of universal conspiracy, the early law of attraction. Lesson: when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. This isn't superstition, it is the concentration of will. When you commit 100%, you begin to see opportunities, signs, everywhere, that ordinary people miss. Video commentary: send a signal to the universe about what you want. Don't just desire it superficially, crave it like a drowning person craves air. When you do, mentors will appear, and doors will open. 4. True love never hinders growth. Lesson: Santiago considered abandoning his treasure because of his love for Fatima. But Fatima pushed him to go. She understood that if he stayed, he might be happy at first, but would grow resentful later. Video commentary: if someone asks you to choose between them and your dreams, that isn't mature love. A true partner is the person who gives you wings to fly higher, not the one who locks you in a golden cage of security. 5. The treasure lies right where you began, the paradox of the journey. Lesson: Santiago found the gold exactly where he started, Spain. But had he not traveled halfway across the world to Egypt, he would never have gained the experience, wisdom, and keen eyes necessary to see the treasure right beneath his feet. Video commentary: stop complaining about being born at a low starting line. Don't think that happiness is in some far-off place. Happiness and opportunity are right here, right now. But to recognize their value, you must venture out and stumble. Go forth so that you may return. Become a better version of yourself to be worthy of the treasure in your own backyard.